Every Sunday, Peter came to this church with one thing on his mind: peace. He was 25, still in university, still building himself brick by brick with the quiet, unhurried patience of a man who trusted the process even when the process offered nothing glamorous in return. He didn't have much by the world's accounting. No car, no apartment, no corner office, no title. He sat near the back of the church every Sunday in a simple white shirt and dark trousers, Bible held in both hands, eyes bright and full of something that couldn't be purchased or inherited. He had courage, the rare, quiet kind, the kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't perform, doesn't need an audience, the kind that simply acts. The church was beautiful on Sunday mornings. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows and fell across the wooden pews in warm, colored patterns, amber and gold and soft rose, like something painted deliberately by a hand that cared about beauty. The congregation filed in every week in their finest, women in elegant Sunday dresses and vibrant head wraps, men in crisp agbada and pressed shirts, children scrubbed clean and slightly reluctant. There was laughter and greetings and the warm press of hands, the familiar, comfortable sound of a community that had known itself for years. Peter loved this. He came for this, the stillness inside the noise, the sense of something larger than his own small and unfinished story. He was not looking for her. He was not looking for anything. And then she walked in. The church doors opened and light flooded in the way it always did, wide and generous and indiscriminate. But something moved differently in that light. He felt it before he saw it. A shift in the quality of the air, the way a room changes when something extraordinary enters it without announcing itself. Her name was Adaeze. She was 31 years old. She wore a deep burgundy dress and moved through the doors with the kind of confidence that doesn't raise its voice, the quiet, settled confidence of a woman who has earned her peace through years of work and decision and self-knowledge. Her natural hair was perfectly set. Small gold earrings caught the light. She didn't look around the room seeking acknowledgement. She simply entered it, and the room reorganized itself around her without her asking. Heads turned. Of course they did. Peter, seated far back near the last pew, glimpsed her from across the aisle. He blinked. I looked again. The choir was singing something bright and full, their voices lifting the whole room. And in the middle of all that sound, Peter went completely quiet inside. Something shifted in him, quietly, completely, like the first note of a song he had never heard, but somehow already knew every word to. He quickly looked away. I looked back. She was real. She was finding her seat near the front, unhurried, composed, completely unaware that in the back of the church a 25-year-old man in a white shirt had just made a decision that would change both of their lives. The service was beautiful that morning. The pastor preached with fire, and the choir answered with thunder, and the congregation was fully, gloriously alive. Peter was supposed to be absorbed in all of it. He was not. His eyes kept drifting, pulled across the rows of worshippers to the front of the church where Adaeze sat with her head bowed, lips moving softly in prayer, completely absorbed in something private and sincere. She was genuinely devout. It wasn't a performance. She was really there, fully present in a way that most people aren't fully present anywhere. Peter watched her, and something in his expression shifted from simple admiration to something quieter and deeper, a sudden, overwhelming certainty. His hand gripped his Bible a little tighter. He closed his eyes, whispered something to himself that nobody heard. When he opened his eyes again, a small, resolute smile had settled on his lips. By the time the choir began their closing hymn, Peter had already made up his mind. After service, the congregation poured into the sunlit church courtyard in the warm, unhurried way of people who had nowhere urgent to be. There was laughter and the smell of food from somewhere nearby, and children chasing each other between adult legs, and the particular joy of Sunday afternoon stretching open ahead like a gift. Peter stood near a pillar and watched Adaeze across the courtyard. She was speaking with a friend near the gate, animated, laughing at something her friend had said. Her laugh was full and unguarded and completely different from her composed entrance. It lit up her whole face, reached her eyes, escaped before she could curate it. Peter exhaled slowly. He straightened his shirt, ran one hand through his hair. His friend standing beside him noticed the look on his face, followed his gaze, and immediately turned back to Peter with wide, warning eyes. "Don't do it," his friend mouthed. Peter looked at him with a calm, pleasant smile. Then I looked back across the courtyard. Then he walked. Not urgently, not nervously, with the steady, unhurried deliberateness of a man who has already counted the cost and decided the price is worth paying. He crossed the courtyard while the Sunday noise washed around him, and as he walked, something strange happened. The sounds of the crowd seemed to recede. The laughter and the music and the children's voices all softened, pulled back, until by the time he stepped gently into Adaeze's path, not blocking her, simply present, the world had become very quiet. She stopped. I looked at him. One eyebrow rose slightly, polite, guarded, practiced. The look of a woman who has been approached too many times by the wrong men and has learned to build the evaluation into her first glance. He smiled. Warm, genuine, completely unintimidated. Good afternoon, he said. I'm sorry to stop you. My name is Peter. I've been coming to this church for 3 months, and I've noticed you. Not just today. And I'd feel like I was lying to myself if I left without telling you that I think you're remarkable. I'd love to get to know you, if you'll allow me. Adaeze stared at him. A beat passed. Then another. Then, she almost laughed. Not mockingly. More like disbelief. The startled exhale of someone who wasn't expecting honesty and has been briefly disarmed by it before the defenses snap back into place. She looked him up and down once. Not cruelly, just honestly. The way a person reads a situation when the stakes feel real. He was younger than she'd expected up close. Handsome in a simple, clean way. His hands were calm at his sides. His eyes were direct and warm and held absolutely no performance in them. Something moved across her face, quick and subtle, there and then gone. Amusement shifted to something she hadn't expected to feel, and she covered it before it could fully form. She looked away briefly. I looked back. Her guard was still in place, but it had moved, just slightly, like a door that had stopped being locked without quite agreeing to open. She shook her head slowly, a half smile she couldn't fully suppress pressing at the corners of her mouth. Then she turned and walked to her car, a sleek, beautiful car parked in the golden Sunday light. She got in, and before she pulled the door closed, she glanced back at Peter once. Just once. Peter stood watching her drive away, hands in his pockets now, his friend shaking his head beside him in the slow, resigned way of someone who has witnessed the beginning of something inevitable. Peter smiled. He was not defeated. He was not discouraged. He was, if anything, more certain than he had been before he walked across that courtyard. She had looked back. He had learned long ago, the ones who look back always come back. The following Sunday he came back. Of course he did. He approached her again after service, and she shook her head, walking a little faster, but the smile came before she could stop it, and she was smiling at the ground all the way to her car. The Sunday after that, he held the church gate open for her. She walked through without looking at him. But she said thank you, barely audible, a whisper she hadn't planned to give. The Sunday after that, he had a small wrapped chocolate bar with a sticky note folded around it. She read the note with elaborately performed disinterest, rolled her eyes with great theatrical commitment, and put it in her handbag. The note read, asterisk still here. Still certain. P. Asterisk. She kept it. She would not have admitted this to anyone on earth, but she kept it, in the small inside pocket of her handbag where she kept only things that mattered. The Sunday after that, she arrived at church, and her eyes swept the courtyard before she had consciously decided to look. They found Peter immediately, standing near the pillar in his white shirt, talking with someone, laughing at something, and she looked away the moment she found him. But she had been looking. She knew it. He knew it too, though he was too gracious to show it. He simply showed up, Sunday after Sunday, consistent, warm, completely unbothered by her resistance in a way that was not indifference. It was something more deliberate than indifference. It was patience, the patient certainty of a man who is not chasing but simply remaining present, because he believes that presence, over time, is its own most powerful argument. And it was. As it turns out, consistency is its own kind of romance. Then came Sunday. It rained. It came without warning, the sky darkening mid-service, the sound of rain arriving against the church windows like a sudden, generous announcement. When service ended and the congregation filed out into the courtyard, Adaeze stepped outside and found the world gray and wet and beautiful. She had no umbrella. She started toward the car park quickly, holding her handbag over her head in the futile, slightly undignified way of someone who knows it won't work but tries anyway. And then, Peter appeared beside her. No greeting, no announcement. Simply, an umbrella, already open, held over both of them without a word, angled slightly in her direction so that it covered her more than it covered him. They walked together through the rain toward the car park. She glanced at him sideways. He was looking straight ahead, peaceful, unhurried, as though sharing an umbrella with a woman who had rejected him 4 Sundays in a row was the most natural thing in the world. She opened her mouth to say something. I closed it. There was nothing to say that wouldn't concede more than she was ready to concede. They reached her car. She got in. He stepped back from the car, and the umbrella was no longer covering him. Rain fell on his white shirt, gentle and steady, and he stood there in it and smiled and waved as she closed the door. Not the wave of a man performing gallantry. The wave of a man who is simply happy. Happy to have walked with her for 2 minutes in the rain. Happy to be soaked in her general direction. Adaeze sat in the parked car and watched him through the fogging windshield as he walked back across the car park in the rain. Umbrella at his side now, completely unbothered by the weather, completely unbothered by the world. Something broke open inside her. Quietly, without drama, like a window being pushed open from the inside after a long time closed. She picked up her phone. The following Sunday, for the first time in this whole story, she found him before he found her. She walked up to him after service, and Peter blinked. For the first time since that first Sunday in the courtyard, something genuine and unguarded crossed his face. Surprise. A real surprise. She had surprised him. She held out a small piece of paper, folded twice. He took it. One conversation, she said. Her chin was lifted. Her voice was composed. Her eyes, for the woman who had built such excellent walls, were doing almost nothing to hide what was behind them. That's all. So you can see for yourself that this doesn't make sense. He unfolded the paper. I looked down at it. I looked back up at her. She had already turned and was walking away. But this time she didn't glance back. She didn't need to. The smile on her face, private and small and absolutely against her will, said everything that needed saying. Peter stood in the Sunday light with her phone number in his hand and laughed once, softly, to himself, a single, full exhale of something very close to joy. He called her that evening. They talked for 4 hours. They talked about childhood, the particular textures of growing up Nigerian, the specific vocabulary of their families, the things their mothers said and the things their fathers never said, and the ways those silences shaped them. They talked about faith, what they really believed, the honest, complicated version, not the Sunday version. They talked about fear, the fears that live quietly in the background of ambition, the ones you don't mention in professional settings. They talked about food with the passionate, detailed enthusiasm that Nigerians bring to any serious subject. They talked about what they believed love should actually feel like, and both of them, separately and simultaneously, were surprised by how much the other had thought about this. The clock on Adaeze's wall moved from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. She was lying on her couch under a blanket by then, empty wine glass beside her, voice softer than it was at 9 p.m., laughing at things he said with a laugh she didn't use in professional settings or Sunday courtyards. Her real laugh, the one that escaped before she could shape it into something more composed. Peter had migrated from lying on his bed to sitting up, leaning forward now, fully absorbed in the voice coming through the phone, amazed by what she was saying, amazed by who she was when no one was watching her be impressive. Two people who were supposedly too different found, somewhere between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., that they were in fact extraordinarily similar, in the ways that actually matter, in the depths where compatibility lives. He took her to dinner the following weekend. The restaurant was simple and warm. Candles on wooden tables, soft light. The kind of place chosen not to impress, but to allow conversation, which is the more honest ambition. Peter arrived first and stood when he saw her walk in. She saw him standing and something in her posture changed, small and immediate and involuntary. A softening she would have prevented if she'd had more warning. They sat down, and the conversation picked up exactly where the phone calls had left it. Effortless, alive, curious, real. She talked, and he followed every word with the quality of attention that is rarer than intelligence and more attractive than almost anything else. He made her laugh, genuinely, repeatedly, with the full unguarded laugh she usually kept for private spaces, and she was surprised each time by how much she was laughing, how little effort it cost to be herself in this particular company. Their food arrived. Neither of them touched it immediately. The candle between them burned steadily lower. Time became completely irrelevant. That particular and uncommon gift of a conversation so good that the world outside it simply ceases to press. The date was supposed to last 2 hours. It lasted 5. Adaeze had arrived with a plan. She was going to be polite and measured and present. She was going to allow him one proper conversation and then explain, gently, the reasons this made no practical sense. She had the reasons prepared. She had rehearsed them, briefly, in her bathroom mirror that afternoon. She never got to that part of the evening. When they finally walked out into the cool night air, they stood beside her car in a silence that was not awkward but full, the kind of silence that only happens between people who have said enough real things to each other that quiet no longer needs to be filled. He opened her car door. She got in. He leaned down to the window. They were close. The city lights were soft and golden behind him. She looked up at him. A beat passed, suspended, complete. He didn't rush it. He reached in slowly and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear with the careful, gentle certainty of someone who has thought about this moment and decided it belongs to him. She went completely still. His hand dropped. He stepped back. "Drive safe, Adaeze," he said. She blinked, started the car, drove. She turned the corner. And then, her composure broke completely and spectacularly. She was beaming, laughing silently to herself, one hand pressed over her mouth, eyes bright in the rearview mirror, completely unable to stop. Behind her, where she couldn't see, Peter stood exactly where she had left him, watching the empty road where her car had been, grinning at the night sky with the uncomplicated joy of a man who knows, with full certainty, that something extraordinary has begun. He hadn't kissed her. He hadn't needed to. He had done something far more powerful. He had made her feel, completely, unexpectedly, wonderfully seen. A few days later they walked in a park together in the warm afternoon light. Casual now, easy, the way two people move when they have stopped performing for each other. Adaeze was carrying a takeaway coffee. They walked slowly through dappled light, and she had been quieter than usual, and he had noticed without saying anything, giving her the space that patience gives. Then she stopped walking. He stopped too, looked at her, patient, open, all the time in the world. She looked at the path ahead for a moment, then at him. "I need you to know something, Peter." Her voice was quiet. The composed, professional voice was gone. This was her actual voice, the 1 a.m. phone call voice, the real one. "I've been independent my whole adult life. I've built everything I have by myself, and I'm proud of that. I don't apologize for it. But somewhere in all that building, I forgot to leave a door open. I just kept adding walls because walls felt safe." She paused. "And then you just walked through one I didn't even know I'd built. And I don't entirely know what to do with that. But I know that I don't want you to stop." Peter looked at her for a long, quiet moment. He took the coffee from her hand and set it on a nearby bench. He took both her hands in his, warm and steady and certain, and looked at her directly, the way he had looked at her from across a church courtyard on an ordinary Sunday morning when he had decided, quietly and completely, that she was worth walking toward. "Then let me stay on this side of the wall, Adaeze," he said. "I'm not here to complete you. You're already complete. I'm just here to walk beside you. That's all I've ever wanted. Just beside you." And so they began, not with fireworks or grand announcements, with the quiet, daily, chosen intimacy of two people who had decided on each other and meant it. They went to the market together on Saturday mornings and argued pleasantly about tomatoes and laughed about nothing in particular. He sat in the passenger seat of her beautiful car with his feet on the dashboard, singing badly and enthusiastically to songs on the radio while she drove and laughed and told him to please stop. She visited his university campus, and his friends stared at her with expressions they were not remotely subtle about concealing. He met her colleagues at a work function and charmed every single one of them with the same uncomplicated warmth he had used on her, and she stood across the room watching him and felt something in her chest that she had stopped expecting to feel. And every Sunday they sat together in church, in the same sunlight that had first illuminated her face on an ordinary morning when he was 25 and unfinished and brave. The same light fell on both of them now. During the sermon, one Sunday her hand found his, quietly, without looking at him, without making it a moment. Just her hand, finding his. He looked down at their hands. I looked up at her. She was facing forward, eyes on the pastor, not looking at him. But she was smiling. They were different in every practical way. Age, career, circumstance. Everything the world uses to calculate who belongs together. They failed every one of those calculations cleanly and consistently. But love, real love, has never been practical. It has only ever been brave. Peter had been brave first. He had walked across a courtyard on an ordinary Sunday without a guarantee, without leverage, without anything except the quiet certainty of a man who had decided that this woman was worth the risk of being wrong. He had shown up Sunday after Sunday not because he was certain she would change her mind, but because he was certain about his own heart, and he had decided that certainty was enough to act on. And that bravery, that particular, quiet, consistent, unbothered bravery, had unlocked something in Adaeze that years of independence and success and self-sufficiency had not reached. It reminded her that strength and vulnerability are not opposites, that a door left open is not a wall taken down, that being complete does not mean being closed. She became brave too, not despite herself, because of him. Some love stories begin with perfect timing. The right ages, the right careers, the right circumstances aligned like a diagram someone drew in advance. Neat, logical, defensible on paper. And then there are the love stories that begin with one person, standing in a sunlit courtyard with nothing to offer except their complete and unhurried attention, simply being bold enough to say, I see you, I choose you, and I'm not leaving. Those are the ones that last. Those are the ones people tell their children about. Be bold enough to love.